have you ever thought about being a floor walker? And I said, a floor walker, what is that? Well, it's kind of like a store detective. You walk around dressed just the way you are and you catch people stealing. And I said, geez, I'd never heard of such a thing. That the naivety of that age, I guess. But anyway, I thought that sounded interesting, and I thought that it might be a good introduction to law enforcement, and thought perhaps I would find a part-time job in that industry. I think I was 20 years old and went to a couple of companies, including Sears, including Kmart. They wouldn't even take my application because I wasn't 21. So I then went into Montgomery Ward. You may remember them. Mm-hmm. And I asked to fill out an application, and under position applying for, I remember putting floor walker. And they took my application and I left. And I kind of figured I'd probably never hear from them, but nonetheless, I completed it and then away I went. And I was still living at home with my parents. And by the time when I got home, my mom said, "Did you apply for a job at Montgomery Ward's?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" Well, somebody's called and they want to talk to you. And I thought, wow. So that was my introduction to retail loss prevention. Montgomery Ward's, I went back to the store. I met with the loss prevention manager, and he hired me. Part-time because I was going to school, but he hired me nevertheless. And that was the beginning of my career. I worked there until I finished school, and Ward's promptly wanted to make me a manager of a new store in Crystal Lake, Illinois. And of course, I'm born and raised in Detroit and spent my entire life there. And I thought it would be an adventure, and away I went. So off to Crystal Lake, and I was there for, I don't remember how long it was, about a year or less, certainly, when a friend of mine called me who worked for a regional department store chain back in Detroit and said that they were looking for a district loss prevention manager, and he thought that I would be a good fit for that role. Do you want to come back to Detroit? Lickety split. And I came back on a weekend, and they interviewed me, and they hired me. So I gave Montgomery Ward's my notice, and that was really the kickoff of my career at a management level beyond stores. So that's how I got into the loss prevention industry. And thank God I worked hard. I had goals and aspirations. From district manager, I wanted to be a regional manager. Then I wanted to be a director. And I aspired to become a vice president. And I worked for him. And I spent better than 40 years in the retail loss prevention industry. And I left it after the number of years that I spent with Kmart. So I was the vice president of loss prevention administration with that company.